Okay, Melissa, you want to begin?
For the collaboration and mentoring of coaching of teachers, I'm a mentor to two brand new teachers that were in my grade level. So I had two brand new teachers at my grade level, and I was their mentor.
Okay.
I am their mentor for this year.
Okay, Renee?
For the collaboration with my teachers, I'll give you an example of how to teach an application, which order to teach it in, and showing them activities that are concrete. So that's what I was talking about.
Okay.
Great.
Nick?
I guess in collaboration with my team, sixth grade team teacher, I've learned to be more of a leader.
All right, and it doesn't, what we're talking about, we're not talking about necessarily collaboration, it could be anything on your list, so, just so you don't think we're
Okay.
stuck on collaboration. Go ahead.
Okay.
Volunteering with STEP. I've put in my list to volunteer for committees that come up with STEP.
With STAT, the Science Teacher
Mhm.
Association of
Teacher
Texas, okay, good, good.
Thinking of ideas cross curriculum, like how to bring in science to our math lessons.
All right, with your math team,
Yes, with the team.
okay, so integrating science with math with your math team.
Yes.
Got it.
I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but how we collaborate here, where the people that know what they're doing are only allowed to ask questions. I have started to do that in my classroom, which has made a big difference in those who didn't know what they were doing, because they would just listen to the person that's always doing the work for them, basically.
Okay, so integrating our
Best
using a best practice that you learned that you thought was valuable in mix that you took back to your classroom and it worked with children.
Yes.
Okay.
I've become more outspoken on my campus, and that has resulted in me being asked to be on district level committee. So I'm on instruction and planning committee for the district and the superintendent's committee.
And how has mix enabled you to do that?
I think that being a part of this group has increased my confidence in being more outspoken about how I think, because I think a classroom should look and how teaching should look, and how and when we don't see that in classrooms as much, really speaking out about that and trying to change the system to make kids more successful.
And Mary Lou nodded her head when she said you become more outspoken. Okay, Mary Lou.
I help with coaching a student teacher.
Help coaching student teachers, How has mix helped you with that?
Kind of sharing stuff that I've learned in Mix It Up, and just like, showing her and making sure that she's not like just jumping into like, because she actually has a different master teacher, but she collaborates with me a lot for some of her classes that she does, but just working together to create lessons that are concrete, pictorial, abstract, those type of things, and kind of moving into like making projects and things like that.
And can I speak to that just a
You
bit?
bet.
Because this particular teacher works across the hall from me, and as a result, the actual teacher in that classroom is using some different strategies than I think had previously been done in that teacher's classroom. Like, I see more stations happening than had been in the past, and I think that is part of Mary Lou's work with a student teacher.
I think that's the strength of having teams, especially if you've got a principal, that's supportive and understands what good instruction looks like and what good professional development looks like. Brandon?
I listed being a member of professional organizations that I never heard of prior to becoming a member of Mix. And then when I go to the conferences like the CAS and then camp, just the idea to collaborate, but more important is to focus on how to teach the math part. Because a lot of the things that I do in class, my first couple of years, I've been just focused on direct teach instead of the bigger picture stuff. Just get the question, solve it, get an answer, get it correct.
You enjoy teaching math more?
Yeah, I do, because I'm seeing the big connection for myself. Like if I can teach an area concept, how to plug it into the formula, but you can take that same concept and paint your house or build something around your home and see how that connects to what you're learning in class.
One of the classes I teach is math models. So it's me and two other teachers that teach this class. One is an alternative certified teacher, and the other one is still in the process of becoming certified. So even as a first year teacher, I kind of took control of that class because it's the students who have general struggles with math. That's why they sign up for this course. And so I design all the lessons. And I know it sounds bad, but they just copy me, and they come and talk to me and get my, stations or handouts or, whatever I used in class, and they try and do that in their class. So even as a first year teacher, and one of the teachers who's the alt cert, he's been teaching for like a year and a half, and then he still comes to me and he's like, oh, what'd you do in class today? And I give him like what I did.
Right. They generally, alt cert generally don't have much pedagogy and certainly no content pedagogy at all.
Yeah, so that's been happening all year. So.
You don't need any of that stuff to teach. Come on.
And do you think mix enabled you to do that? How did mix play a role in that?
As a first year teacher, like I didn't have any handouts, I didn't have any resources, I didn't have anything. But with mix, I knew what I had to do to teach, the best practices and the best way for students to learn. So I incorporated that like instantly in my class because I knew it was the best thing to do. Whereas the alt cert and this other teacher who's still getting certified, they don't have that as a resource. So
They don't know what
they're
best
probably just
practices
teaching how
are.
they were taught, which is direct teach.
Right.
But now since they talk to me, they do more stations, collaborative work, and things like that, more hands-on, manipulatives.
And direct teach is not a bad model, it could be used for processes or skills, and there's a lot of math that should be taught with a direct instructional model. But what we don't see is we don't see the full cycle. We see a lecture and then a handout. We don't see the input and modeling where the teacher is checking for understanding. We don't see the guided practice to where the students are individually or working in small groups, doing the problems, if you would, and then the independent practice. Too often we hear that's homework. Well, that's not correct. That is not a direct instructional model. Independent practice means that the students are working under the teacher's guidance. The teacher is monitoring and individually questioning and checking for understanding with students. So we're not even seeing a correct direct instructional model. People call it that, but it's not really that way. Tim?
I wrote about delivering a lesson to this cohort of teachers here.
Moving into teacher leader.
And also, it's still teacher leader, being on the leadership committee at the school.
Okay, Brenda?
I am an alt cert, and so I was doing just direct teach whenever I began this program. And so a big part of what I'm going to be writing about is the fact how I am incorporating the best practices that I have learned about doing the wait time, using cards to call on students, to make sure I'm questioning, that I'm doing concrete. At the high school level, I was teaching the way I was taught. This is what you do, now do it. And so the fact that you're actually giving them hands-on, I had been told at the high school, give it a shot. I didn't see any of the other teachers really using it. The couple of times I did it, they became projectiles. So the fact that I'm learning
You're talking about the manipulatives becoming
yes,
projectiles.
my concretes were not being used for. So now I'm using it with these students and I'm seeing the aha moments. And I'm also becoming an advocate for myself. before this program, if I would say, could I have this, they said no, okay, and I'd walk away. Now I'm probably annoying, but I'm persistent, and I eventually end up getting some of the things that I need, maybe not everything, because money can only go so far. But I will ask for trainings that I feel that I need, I will ask for manipulatives that I feel that I need, and if I don't get it the first time, I'll go back again, and maybe next year's budget will come to me. Like Brandon said, thank you, almost David, don't ask me why. I've also joined organizations because Mix has said, hey, check out this workshop training, like the one that was up in Austin. And whenever you sign up for that workshop, you also become a member at the same time. So, sorry,
Okay. Go ahead.
For me, it's been, well, my school, teachers sign up to do walkthroughs in other teachers' classrooms, and, member schools let me know that they were having difficulties with teachers actually allowing other teachers to come into the classroom. So she asked me if I would let a few come through my class, and of course, I mean, I don't think, well, I will say that mixed up program has attributed to the fact that I feel I've always been okay with people critiquing me, but I guess like, you know, the standard that you hold us to, and the fact that, you know, you always, you know, you allow us to question each other and, you know, make us, you know, how can I say, be certain of what we're saying and what we're doing and be confident in what we are, we're gonna present and what we're gonna say. So I think that's been very helpful in the sense that when someone comes through like, oh, you know, what are you doing, or why did you do that, I feel like I'm better able to respond to them and, you know, be a little bit more confident in my teaching abilities, especially with the fact that I've only been teaching for about a year and a half.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it's
you're
been
a
good.
new teacher.
And a lot of them, I know, I was gonna ask Dr. Brown because when we went to Navarro Elementary and went to Observer, I actually did that, and two of my walkthroughs were the following week when I implemented what she taught, so they were very excited, like, oh, we've never seen that, I'm like, that was nice. So I just wanna let you know that, but yes, that was a good one.
Yeah, we'll have to be sure, you'll have to tell her that story.
With me is being, a lot of what's already been said, gaining more confidence in my own teaching ability, being an advocate for myself and saying, yes, I think that's right. Also, with the collaboration that we've had in here, actively seeking out other teachers, especially vertically, going to the lower grade levels, approaching a fourth grade teacher, say, hey, how do you teach your strategies? What do you do when you teach in whatever concept? And then say, can I come in and see it? Do you mind if you teach it during my conference period, sitting, filming, having the filming and the pictures and whatnot, and modeling that in my own experience and going back and reflecting on it and doing it. And touching base. So we have our monthly meetings here, we have our summer, but then having the mentors come in and sit and talk to us, that's something that I hadn't experienced before. Somebody sitting in your classroom and watching you for 45 minutes and then having that immediate feedback and saying, well, this is how it went. As opposed to something floating in space. And I'm doing that with the teachers on my campus. And as a result, by me approaching them, asking what they're doing, well, this is how I do it, I'm getting more of the lower grade levels. Saying, well, what do you do for science? What should we do to make sure they're ready? And
You know, something that we started doing with Browning, and I started doing with my student teachers, is what we call a double observation. And we did that with Elvira in her classroom, and it turned out very well. So we would go in and make an observation, do a debriefing, and then the teacher would reteach the lesson after we did the debriefing. And we have seen significant changes with our student teachers as well as our mixed teachers by providing that second observation. It ends up making a pretty long day, especially for those that drive from a long distance. But it seems to be very powerful, and we will be sharing that with the principals.
Reaching out and trying to foster relationships with community partners and experts. So like the Houston Gemological Society, they actually have core samples, and I was trying to get those to come up to school. That didn't happen. But and then like we have a junior gardeners program in most of the major cities, trying to get some of my kids involved in that, trying to get them to go and do things that they can bring back to the classroom.
Is that with the master naturalist or the master gardeners?
The master gardeners.
Master gardeners,
And then, like the science teacher at my daughter's school is actually a science teacher I want to grow up and be. Like you walk into his classroom, it's like, oh my god, you know, it's just science. So, he actually helps write curriculum for HISD, so I've been trying to see if I can find time to sit with him and work with him. And
to learn how to do that?
it was not necessarily to learn how to do that, but, you know, what is he doing in his classroom? I mean, we were talking about for decomposition, he's having logs shipped to his school, rotting logs, and his kids are going to take it apart. And so the activities that he's doing and the way that he's approaching it is essentially what we do here, but I mean, he got there through, you know, different experiences. So like Ashley said, meeting with other teachers and trying to learn from them as well, and being, you know, open about that, approaching other people.
So you feel more comfortable approaching other people because of the collaboration that you, and the model that you've seen in Mix?
I think so. I mean, my first year, they called me Baby Bird because I'd always go and feed from the mama birds in my science team. They would, you know, they'd help me. But, so I haven't really had a problem with that, but it's just knowing
Have you
what.
become the mama bird yet?
Yes, 'cause I go to him frequently.
Not within my campus, because this is my first year on my campus, so.
You have to lay low.
Yeah, but knowing what questions to ask is also important as well. I mean, and that's something, you know, I'm not flailing about in the dark anymore. So Mix has helped me with that, and recognizing what a good science teacher looks like, you know. So yes, Mix has helped greatly with that aspect. So.
Good.
And so with me, I'm trying to move really forward with innovation, and I have joined the Lockhart team, the Visionary Improvement Plan. So they have a goal, they have a vision. So I feel like I have that same vision. I want to be able to, like I wrote a grant, I want to have like our own little STEAM lab in our school. I have done a lot of projects, but a lot of it has come from me, so I want to be able to get resources and more materials. So just to grow as a leader with that, and it's kind of changed school culture a little bit, where the kids are just, you know, they have their flexible seating, they have a lot of time to communicate with each other, go outside in the field. And so those are the things that I'm envisioning, and so as part of the proposal that we're writing with this Visionary Improvement Plan, I'm taking part of that, so I'm doing some of the writing.
And is this a Lockhart area leadership group for
Yes,
something?
it is.
Visionary
It just
vision
started
group,
this
you
year.
said?
Yes.
So this would be all types of people, not just educators. So it'd be business.
Yes, a lot of librarians,
community.
librarians,
Librarians.
middle school, elementary teachers, everybody's sort of in it. It's pretty awesome.
Elizabeth?
I think, well, I know this mixed program has brought out a lot of awareness in what I'm doing. Whether I know that what I've done is good or bad, I have that awareness and the confidence and ability to reach out to those that I know that are going to be more effective in feedback and what provisions they're going to give to me that are going to be essential for my classroom. And I still struggle a lot and everything, but it's just having that confidence and the awareness of is a big thing, because there's a lot of people that I know that they're stuck on this way, and because it's worked for them this whole time, you know, they're not going to change. But if you reach out more to different people and give yourself that personal, I guess, different perspectives and stuff. And also just joining the TICS committee, I wasn't really confident in what I could do with it, but being a part of it and getting that end of it where you're now involved and looking at from a different level what it entails, that's been a lot of eye-opening experience. So
It's interesting, I'm hearing several of you say that it's given you more confidence in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I don't know that I would have predicted that. That's interesting. Okay, Melissa, you wanna start again?
Sure do. See, I got all kinds of notes.
Just one, we just need one.
I am also on the LISD VIP, which is the Visionary Instructional Planning Group. And we were charged, different groups have different things on what's your group.
It's pretty much, it's trying to just redesign school culture, so we're
Okay.
asking for all kinds of things.
Ours is student agency, so our group is looking at more about how can we get the students in the driver's seat, where the teacher is the facilitator and you know, not the stage on the stage or whatever, but you know, where the students are taking ownership of their learning. And that's
Okay.
the committee, the district committee.
As people talk about speaking up, I now, even though, again, I came in half a year, I'm speaking up for my department more than everyone else. I'm going up to the principal, talking about what we need, what we're lacking, and trying to make sure we get all that funding in. I got all the codes for my department, and been working on that, getting stuff where I mean, I got it stuff, but it kind of took a little while, but for 4 months, I think, you know, a lot.
I don't know what the question we're asking.
The question,
I've been locked outside.
is on the paper there about what has mixed helped you do in terms of moving into leadership roles.
I will be honest.
You wanna pass? We'll come back?
I've had a lot of medical stuff the past 2 years in mix, so I mean, it's a big pass for me, but I have ideas. Maybe department head, but not in my district.
Mm-hmm.
So that's about it
Okay.
as far as I want to go.
I'd like to become confident enough in my skills to present at CAST.
The CAST deadline is is May 1, and I am going to strongly urge all of you to think about what kind of what can you share with teachers that will help them. What are things that you've learned? And I would also suggest you do it together. So it may be the two of you come up with a CAST proposal, and you need to go online. And there are, I haven't looked at it yet because I'm going to put in a couple of proposals, but it's usually, you have to, of course, have a title that's within a certain number of words, like 50 or something like that. And you have to look and see, is it with or without spaces, so you have to do a word count whenever you're writing out all of the narratives. And there's usually a short summary that's probably 2 or 3 sentences or something that will go into the program. And then there's a longer narrative that may be 1,000 or 1,500 characters that the committee who's reading through the proposal, it tells them more about what you're going to do. And so you have to, what I do is I just do that on a separate Word document, and I cut and paste what the criteria is for each section. I put it on a Word document, and then I craft the language in that Word document, and then I paste it in. I had an interesting aside here. I'll chase a rabbit. I put in for AAAS. There's a AAAS meeting, American Association for the Advancement of Science, in Austin in February. And when you put in for one of those, they asked for a videotape of you speaking. And so the only thing I had was something on mix of Browning and me up there chit-chatting about something. I don't know what it was. And I thought, why do they want to know that? But I'm thinking because it's an international conference, they want to make sure that they get people in there who can speak English well enough to be understood, by and I don't know if slow Texan's going to make it or not. Okay, so CAST conference, which is what I hope that you do. Think about something that you've learned, that you have shared with other teachers that they seem to have valued. They have a lot of hands-on. There are some TEKs that are more difficult to teach than others that maybe you've had some ideas about that might be helpful and that would incorporate best practices as you know it. Not many people know about concrete pictorial abstract and are known to the unknown, or limiting your lesson to one concept per lesson, so kids actually are scaffolding that knowledge. And I'm sorry Sandy and I didn't get a chance to talk about it, but I've been thinking a lot about this concrete pictorial abstract, mainly because I have exams that Alexis just took, and did a great job, if you know she would. Because she knows the consequences if not. The idea of where does graphing play in that, I want you to think about, where does that graphing play in concrete pictorial abstract?
Abstract.
Okay, just wait a minute, I want you to think about it. So, what, can you graph concretely in math? Are there manipulatives that you could use to graph concretely in math? Okay. And then if you put that on paper, when does, well, let me back up. What's the difference between pictorial and abstract in graphing?
The words and the
Words, yeah, what?
And your pictorial, you're like picture graphs, like where they actually
Could be.
have the pictures to represent.
Okay, here,
Well, I
Brittany?
think one way that if you're graphing abstractly, you actually have an equation that means what? And then you're substituting an input value and getting an output value, and then you're documenting that data. That's very abstract, it doesn't really mean.
Okay, let me tell you, I was thinking the same thing as you are, but in my mind, the pictorial was being able to read somebody else's graph. And creating my own graph, it became abstract. So it's, you know, it's a more difficult level. So just thinking about graphing, it was just, you know, one of those examples of if it's a best practice, then how does that really look in a classroom? That's what, you know, one of the things that we have to work out. And, you know, we've been using this for, I don't know, what, 3, 4, 5 years. So just for you to see how we continue to think about it and to refine our thinking. So the kind of things like that, you know, what have you discovered about best practices that you've seen work in your classroom? Just like what Pamela was saying about using, if you know the answer, you can only ask question idea, and what that looked like in her classroom. So yes, I want all of you to start thinking about CAS. And you know you get an extra $50 if you present. Y'all got that message, right? No? Yes? What does that mean, Alexis?
That's not I'm not in charge of that.
Oh, that's right. No, she's right.
That's the people.
That's Tara. Tara sent that out about, she was telling, probably somebody knew that it's $100 a day typically, and then $50 if you present. You get extra $50 if you present. So, in case that matters.
And think about if you've been to CAST or any other conference, the ones that you went to and you thought they start leaving, you start leaving in the back, you sit in the back, you go in and judge it. Try to think of the things that you got so excited about and you stayed to the very end and you wanted more, you know, from a 1 hour to a 3 hour, because I'll just give you an example. I went to a GT one, and GT should be, you know, anyway, for 1 hour we watched about 50 PowerPoint slides with 1 inch, you know, and I was thinking, this is not very good, you know, it wasn't showing differentiation or concrete, anything. It was just, so most of the people got up and left, but I stayed because I was in training. But think of that.
Also, I would urge you, if you're gonna do any kind of hands-on, make sure there is some kind of summary, or that the teachers know what they learned. I've told you this story. When I moved from high school, I taught high school for 16 years and then moved to middle school. And when I moved to middle school, I started going to some of the elementary and middle school, you know, sessions. And elementary teachers are so clever. I am not that creative. But I'd go to these sessions and then we'd do this really clever stuff, and then it would be over with and I'd say, well, what was I supposed to learn? I mean, I know a lot of science and I couldn't figure out what I was supposed to learn in this activity. So make sure you know that they end up learning some science and it's not just some cute activity. Yeah. And if you want some help, we'll be glad to, toss ideas back and forth, etc.
Yeah, if you want to that was my second life, and HSD gave PD and a lot of other things for 10 years. So, if you, and presented at CAS, and I was like you, I was afraid, and in STA I was afraid, but you really do gain a lot of experience by doing that, and so go for it, you know. But, if you wanna call me or anything too, I'll.
Yeah, we'll be glad to help you.
We're talking about roles. This is my first year here at my campus. So third, probably not next year, because we're supposed to have a lot of probably new teachers, but third year, you know, if I would be was taking that type of like GLC lead, with our math department and bringing these ideas.
And so are you, how are you preparing other than watching Browning and being a part of that?
Well, it's, you know, like, I mean, here, you know, with my 7th grade team, you know, that's already been happening even this year, but, you know, being, I guess, at that level, you know, taking it down to 6th and 8th, you know, to where those, you know, just make sure it's happening everywhere with.
The math
Because again,
pedagogy,
also the
best
first year,
practices.
you're right, you know, so again, but, maybe not next year, but my 3rd year at that campus.
Okay, good.
So sloppy language is a big, topic of discussion in my class this year. And I have, one student in particular who, anytime the word "it" is said, he is right on top of.
What is
that.
it?
So that, the discussion of sloppy language has actually, been taken to other classrooms. And some of my students have had discussions about using pronouns in their writing assignments with their ELA teachers. And some of my students have come back to me and said, you know, we were sitting in math class today, and the teacher used the word "it" over and over and over again. We didn't know what he was talking about, you know, that kind of stuff. So,
But they haven't been empowered to ask what it is yet.
not
in
in those other classes, but the discussions of using pronouns in written assignments has
Good.
happens.
Good.
It's almost the same as Candace, because there's a lot of things that we do that are similar. Like we're part of like a lot of groups within our school and district, so it's kind of hard for me not to copy you a lot.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, the question is, what has mix enabled you to do in terms of moving into more leadership roles?
Well, can I say that Mary Lou is the teacher of the year on our campus?
We have several teachers of the year in our mix. No pun intended. Good.
I guess maybe being a little bit more vocal, like, cause I tend not to wanna take a leadership role. I guess that's my main thing. Like I would try to do it in the shadows. Like that's just my philosophy on things. I really don't wanna do it like out in the open. But just try and be more vocal with things, either about the school or about the contents.
Good for you. Brenda?
Giving presentations in math department meetings about something I learned here. Like I'm gonna take this back to the 8th grade teachers because they teach transformation reflections. And I encourage, we now go to the 5th grade and we talk to the teachers about some of the things that we're seeing with the 6th grade now, all back to collaboration. So let's just go speak to the 5th grade teachers, see how they're teaching things, what they're saying, and maybe correct some things so that they have we won't see those issues in 6th grade now when they come into middle school.
Yeah, good. Tim?
Another thing that I wanted to talk about is this year, and this is the first year since, the first time since I've been in mix is having a student teacher in my classroom. And seeing that even at the college level, they're still being taught abstractly, and watching a student teacher try to explain how to build something concretely. And going in and stepping in and taking them off to the side and having a conversation with them. Because the class that is being led was building a house. And we're having students build these really huge outside walls and really small inside walls. And so thinking about what Dr. Browning brought up at the beginning of the session today is making connections to things outside. They can't make a connection, the students were not making the connection that all the walls of the house have to be the same height, or you're not gonna have a roof. They just, it was like, you know, so asking those questions and having the student teacher also ask those type of questions. It's been a very interesting week.
Does the university supervisor use best practices or say anything about it when they do the debriefing of the lessons?
I don't think that they use best practices that they know. So they're using probably more, and it's a student teacher from here from Texas State, through the math department.
Mm-hmm.
So they're using more of the direct teach, but it's more of the direct lecture.
It's not a direct teach, it's a lecture.
Okay, then it's a lecture.
Yeah.
So I think they're being taught how to lecture and not how to incorporate. So it's all concrete, it's all abstract.
Yeah.
It's very procedural.
And we wonder why kids hate math or science or whatever. Brenda?
So this is our first year as a school, together with a bunch of different people. I joined the math committee. They have different committees, one for literacy, one for math, and we were planning an activity. So actually being able to go back to the confidence thing, vocalize and speak on the activity that we wanted to do for the whole school and problem solve something that would work from pre-K all the way up to 5th grade. We finally set on something that fell apart because of time, and we didn't get to implement it. I'm hoping next year we'll actually be able to get this timing down and placement on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And it was put in a bad spot, and so it has to be postponed, and it seems like that postponement has happened indefinitely. But I'm hoping next year on that committee, we can actually come up with something that it'll be scaffolded a little bit better for pre-K up to 5th. I don't think this one went as well, but
I see a lot of PBLs trying to be implemented over a number of years. This is not new, guys. This was done 30 years ago, at least. And I remember one school I was working with that the social studies teacher chose World War II as the theme for this PBL. And so they ended up with the science teacher talking about the atomic bomb in middle school. There was no connection to any of the science standards. I mean, it was just, throw it against the wall and see if it sticks kind of idea. And I think whenever we're thinking about how can we do K-5 or, whatever, or some bigger dream, what's going to be driving it? Is this a dream driving it, or something that really is going to help our children learn? And so, I would urge you to speak up if they're going to try to put a World War II atomic bomb into your PBL. That makes no sense at all in terms of making, interdisciplinary connections. And quite frankly, that's why we started with math and science. We thought this is too hard to do math and science and engineering and technology, and we used to do some technology with teachers. We said, no, we've got to get to the fundamental first and just make that first connection, that first cross-curricular connection's hard enough to do. So just started small.
I'm going to continue with that sloppy language. I try to emphasize that this year with my kids. So not so much, they're not really conscious of the fact that, every time I say it, because I've made a really big effort to not use pronouns, but also using, correct vocabulary, because I know sometimes when we speak,
we tend to kind of just say, the graph instead of saying the coordinate grid. And, making sure that I'm using the correct vocabulary that they're also going to see, not only see, but be able to use in years to come. So that was another big one, because I know my principal really stresses vocabulary, especially the way that they're gonna see it on the test, but I think also like when they get to 6th and 7th and 8th grade, they already know what they're referring to, not just calling it a graph, but also saying it's a coordinate grid, what quadrant it's in, and kind of, expanding on that vocabulary.
Notice the difference though in the focus of academic vocabulary. It's using academic vocabulary in the context of learning. It's not a focus on just vocabulary. And I know last year when we went to the mini cast, over at San Marcos High School, there were a couple of sessions that were just vocabulary, building vocabulary. And you see that everywhere. It's not about building vocabulary. It's about learning math and science and then naming that. And so, be very careful about this. Focus on vocabulary and let it be like this rather than just vocabulary. Brenda, you just were going like this.
An idea popped in my head and I started thinking, I know when I was at the high school I used grouping agent as opposed to parentheses, so I don't do PIMDOS. At the junior high level, are y'all using like GIMDOS or GIMS for grouping agent instead? Okay, because I just realized if there's that gap, me giving them the language, saying grouping agent, which is parentheses, brackets, braces, and then if they go to the junior high and they start using parentheses only, and then they go up to the high school and they go back to grouping agents, then it was kind of pointless. Sorry?
Why would they only use parentheses only?
I did.
Oh,
yes.
yes.
So I've been telling my kids I'm trying to use the academic vocabulary that applies, but that also, they don't have to change it later. They already have it.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking, I haven't been communicating to see, is it carrying across? Because if there's that gap, they change the parentheses.
That vertical alignment.
Yes, so, sorry, that was a aha, and like, I'm very kinesthetic. I'm very kinesthetic, so I think it's all this.
I know, I can see that on your face.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
So I need to check on.
Going back and kind of touching on the vocabulary too, I have a lot of bilingual English language learners in my classroom. But I think starting with the concrete, and I put in here the manipulatives, by starting with the concrete, they get to touch it, and all they have to worry about is the concept. And oftentimes I say, okay, well, how are you doing? And they'll put their hands down at first, so they put their hands down and they start talking. Some of them, either because of the speech issues, medical, or because they're still trying to wrap around the English language, I don't quite get what they're saying. I say, oh, okay, tell me, but show me. And beginning it's like, what? And I'll pick it up and I say, show me. And at the end of the year now, it's like, all right, well, show it to me. And then they'll touch and move things. And say, oh, okay, and I'll use words. I'll use the vocabulary. And just verbally, but not, write it down and memorize it. And then at the end is whenever we put the academic vocabulary as you're responsible for it, but they've already been listening to it, hearing it as they're using it. And I think with my English language learners, all they have to worry about is the concept. They don't have to worry about, am I saying it right? Is this the right word? Is it the correct tense? And then once we get to the abstract, the concept is firm in their brain in a concrete and pictorial way. So now they can focus on the part they struggle with, which is the language or the language aspect of it.
And this is one of the things that the mentors have said, that when they come into the classroom, even for teachers who are new to mix, they seem to be able to implement the concrete, pictorial, abstract sequence in their instruction. That seems to be one of the first things that they kind of latch on to, if you would. Pamela, you're back there hiding out. Does that mean you want to pass?
No. The first thing I wanted to say was a compliment Kim. She's my mentee at my school, and last year when I was her mentor, anytime I said anything to her, she'd start crying. And literally. And I'm like, but now teachers actually come to her, and because the teacher that she is working with, they actually took the pre-AP kids from her and gave them to Kim, even though Kim is only the second year there. And this teacher's upset because why are they, because they've seen what Kim does in the classroom. She does an amazing job. She actually takes them outside to discover stuff. And, you know, of course, in some of the other teachers are like, you take them outside. We have some really difficult children. And so they're like, you take them outside? What kind of crazy thing is that to do? But she has them, and she's learned how to, oh, all right, never mind, let's go back in. Let's try it again. Okay, no, let's go back in, and to be patient and teach them how to be observant of their environment. And she's taking them out on the playground, and what's that? I can't remember the one project that we did in here where you had the elevation. The elevation one where we did
Topo maps.
Thank you. And so she was taking them out there, and I'm like, I didn't even think about that with our playground because it's so jacked up because it's all these different levels, and I was like, that's it right there, and I didn't even think of that, but I did only because she was taking her kids out there to see it. But and then the other thing is, I'm on a lot of committees. I think only because I've taught so long, they're like, yeah, she'll do it. But I'm trying to get off of committees because I want to be in my classroom more so that I can do grouping, and I'm digging through manipulatives that I thought I could only use in 5th grade. And I'm like, those block things, I saw them somewhere with dust on them. And I'm actually digging them out, trying to figure out how I can use them in my algebra class, because a lot of my kids they never learn how to think, how to. It's too hard to figure it out. Well, okay, hold on. What do you do? What do you know? So we always talk about video games where, so you get a new video game, you die and you quit. No, you do it again, and then you go a little bit further, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and you do it 500,000 times, and by the end, you know the entire game. And I said algebra is the same way. You do it again and again and again, and you die and you die and you die, and you just keep going. And in the end, you know, you get the princess, you know. So anyway, those were the 2 things.
Making sure they're writing. Or no, because